This episode is brought to you by Pixel 2 Editions, a full-service fine art printing company. More about them later. Hello and welcome to In the Art Scene podcast, an art podcast that has it all. I'm your host, Galina Marquez, and I invite fascinating people to talk about their personal creative journeys, success stories, and inspiration. We talk about art business and marketing, how to find your creative voice, and all the new trends in the art world like NFT, AI, and such. Join me and my guest for today's conversation. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to In the Art Scene podcast. And last couple of episodes, I was playing a fangirl because I was interviewing the artist that I have been following for a long time. But today I have another enigma, and shout out to Azert Land for introducing us. I am having Dr. Michael Bitz with me today. And what Michael is doing is he's running the organization. It's called the Comic Book Club. And that is the main topic of our conversation today, because from what I can see, this is an amazing, amazing organization that is helping youth in New York City and pretty much everywhere in the nation, in the world.
Yes, hi, Galina, and thank you for having me. And yes, it's been amazing since the year 2000. So that's 23 years now. I've been
Wow.
running this comic book program all over the world, started in New York City, but I've had a lot of different journeys in this effort.
We will drill down to that, and we'll probably start like from the year 2000. But can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself? Who are you? What kind of doctor you are, and why did you decide to start the program?
Sure. Well, I'm a doctor of education. So technically, I have an EDD, which is not the most common degree these days, but it basically prepares you to become an expert in educational field. My background was actually in music education, so it's quite unusual, and it's part of my life journey to tell how I got into helping young people to make comic books. But back when I was in graduate school, I was involved in a project called Learning in and Through the Arts. And so it was really looking at the different ways that all the different arts could impact the way that students perform in school. And so my component was really focused on the music end of things, but I was exposed to the way that all the arts and just creative thinking in general can really inspire a person to thrive and do incredible things in life and in school. And so I started thinking about the arts more broadly and thinking about the ways that we could connect specific, in this case, literacy skills with creative skills. And that's how the idea of kids creating comic books and then publishing those comic books and presenting them to the community and really building a holistic way of reinforcing literacy skills, key literacy skills like reading and writing, but also bringing in social development and community development and building the whole child, as we like to say in the world of education. So that's sort of the seed of how it all started in terms of the concept.
Wow. Who would think that comic books would actually be so beneficial for like on so many levels for the development of a human being and the community? It's amazing. So so you started the program in the year 2000, and how did that go?
Well, I'll say that one of the things that I learned from that research project, Learning in and Through the Arts, is that there had to be a really tightly connected way in which the arts were connected to the academic learning. Now, remember, this was 23 years ago,
Mhm.
and this was a time when the Mozart effect was really first coming onto the scene, where people were like, "Oh, if I play some classical music to my child, they'll be a genius in math." And we were really trying to show that that's not how it works at all. And by the way, that whole concept was debunked very shortly after it became like a news phenomenon. That in fact, you really have to think really hard about how you'll tie in the creative elements and the artistic elements. And so that's how the idea of creating a comic book or helping young people to create comic books really came to life. I will also say at the time I was working for an educational publishing company and I was creating the most boring, um, awful textbooks, workbooks, really, that I was really not, I knew that this was not the right way to present curriculum to children or schools or teachers. And so those kind of things kind of converging at the same time said, I'm going to start something new. And that's what I do with the comic book project. I quit that job, that publishing job, which was crushing me like so many corporate jobs do.
Yep.
And I said I had this idea of helping kids to create comic books. And I just started working with the people I knew, and I think it speaks to developing your network. Some of those people I knew were my thesis advisors at my graduate program. And so they gave me a little cubby hole at the school at Teachers College at Columbia University. But more importantly, I was able to start writing grants through the college. I also had a partnership with Dark Horse Comics, which is based out in Portland, Oregon. Independent, but really great comics company. And so started building partnerships, and mostly important in the New York City after school community. I partnered with an organization called the After School Corporation, and they helped me pilot the program, which helped me really learn a lot about what would work and what wouldn't work, and then to kind of build this model that has been the foundation for the project ever since.
I have a question. Why comic books? Why is
Well,
that
so
media?
many people ask me, so you must be like a huge comics fan and you must have grown up with comics. And the truth is, I really didn't. I grew up as a reader of, I was reading Stephen King novels when I was 8 or 9. I was a very early reader. I did have some comics in my collection, but I wasn't really an avid comics reader. So why comic books? Well, it goes to that foundation of connecting the artistic and creative skill with a specific academic skill. So in this case, you can't have a comic book without the words, and you can't have a comic book without the pictures. And tying those two things together is what it's all about. Now, in my program, in the comic book project, we're really focused on kids creating their own comic books, not so much reading Marvel comics or Dark Horse comics or any other kind of comic book, but giving them the opportunity to create their own, tell their own story, create their own characters. That's really the only rule in the comic book project, is that your storyline and your characters have to be original. And so from there, you can really go in any direction. So that's why comic books, I will say, in the last 23 years, the idea of comics in education has actually become quite popular. And like if you look at the Scholastic book catalog, almost 50% of it is comic books and graphic novels and comics in various forms. But 23 years ago, it was quite uncommon to think of comics as an educational tool, even though people have been talking about this for probably almost a century, actually. It's only in the last 10 to 15 years that it's become almost a mainstream educational effort. So I feel like we kind of we're a groundbreaking organization in that field. And, I've continued to advocate, though, for students themselves being the creators and not just the consumers of the comic books.
Wow, it really sounds like you are making a huge change in the educational field. I have a question though. So for me, thinking about how young, how old are your students? So what's the youngest? What's the oldest?
Well, the original target group was middle school
Uh-huh.
because the research shows that there's this precipitous drop in reading interest at the middle school level. So we were really targeting, grades in the US, we say grades 6 through 8. And that was the target audience. Now, since then, we have worked with kindergartners all the way through adult English language learners, because in the end, creativity and storytelling can be for everybody. But the original, and I like to think that that's still the prime audience for this kind of program, are those upper elementary and middle schoolers who really need creative activities and energy to inspire them to want to be in school and after school and just want to learn in general. Especially with so much competition with video games and all the
Yeah.
kinds of media that are
Yeah.
surrounding us. the opportunity to be creative, and oftentimes with just a sharp pencil and blank paper, I still feel is very powerful.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking so. As you were talking about children creating their own characters and their own storylines, like middle school, lower high school is like some of the hardest teenage years I can imagine. So I imagine that there's also that creative and kind of psychological outlet for them because there's like a lot going on in their brain, a lot going on in their bodies, and some friend dramas, maybe first love, heartbreak, etc., etc. Some academic challenges, maybe whatever's going on at home. So I imagine that comics would be that really cool outlet, the bridge between like just being creative drawing and journaling, maybe, or I don't know. Did you find that this is true, or am I just fantasizing?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, one of the most surprising things in the early years, my focus was connecting arts to literacy. But what happened was that was going on, but the storylines that the middle schoolers in New York City, that's where our pilot took place. And I've been working in primarily cities across the US and even around the world. The storylines that they were creating about heroes and villains were very much reflective of their own lives and their own neighborhoods and their own experiences. And there was a layer there that I should have been ready for or, expecting. But, it sort of just after that first year, it struck me about the content of their comics was very personal and probably one of the only opportunities that they had in a school-based setting to be able to tell those stories. Because you don't really get an opportunity usually when you're reading somebody else's book and answering a multiple choice question or writing an essay.
Yeah.
These became very personal and very much about identity exploration and who are your heroes and who are the villains. And there was a whole very deep layer to the comics that became an amazing part of the experience from there on. And each year after that, the kinds of comics that kids have created have been so powerful and so exciting that keeps me inspired to keep reading them year after year. So that's really absolutely right on, as you had said, that the storylines and the content are about the authors themselves. In this case, those authors are middle schoolers in New York City or wherever they're from.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and you mentioned that those comic books are being published. Are they? So all of them?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. So in the beginning, this was kind of before it was easy to make a website or make a PDF file. We were very much focused on publishing printed comic books. And we have continued to do that over the years. But the problem, as we have, just hinted upon, is that you can't print thousands of comic books in a printed publication. It'll be the size of an encyclopedia or an old school phone book. Probably young listeners won't really know what a phone book is, but
Yeah.
there's this huge compendium which just costs prohibitive for a small nonprofit. So ever since then, we've really been focused on digital publications
Hmm.
because in a digital publication you can publish everybody. And in fact, many more people can see the digital publication. Anyone around the world could read, a PDF comic book or a flip book comic book. So that's really been the focus in the last, 8 to 10 years in terms of publication. I still believe in the value of printed comics, but we also have to kind of balance what we can afford to do. So what would usually happen with the printed comics is it would be sort of a competition and the best comics would get published, whether they're their most creative or their best drawn or the best storyline. And we'd have independent panel evaluate all the comics that came in. But more recently, we've been trying to publish all of the participants' work on online galleries or PDFs or based on school-based websites. There are lots of different ways that can happen.
Is there a centralized website where you keep the library, or it's just city by city, school by school?
We do have a gallery of free PDF comic books on our website, which is comicbookproject.org. But we've also been encouraging the schools to publish them on their own websites because typically parents and community members will have more access to the school-based website than going to our website. So we've been sharing the links. We've been sort of dual publishing those kinds of PDFs and flip books, and it's been an opportunity to kind of see the work in multiple places. So that's typically where we recommend people to go if they want to get started with the project and then kind of go to individual sites and schools from there.
Yeah, and I also have a question. I kind of want to go back a little bit about this the psychological aspect of kids creating books based on their personal stories. Once those books are being published and available for the community, have you noticed any change shift in the community that is consuming those comic books?
Yes, absolutely. For example, and we've had so many amazing projects over the years. So just by example, in Tucson, Arizona, and this was way back in 2008, this is a long time ago, we had a comic book project involving a number of different community partners, including some native reservations, as well as library programs and so on. Turned out that one of the youth created a comic book about his experience in foster care, and how his experience started out really rocky, and then turned out he found a caring and loving family. But that story that he created in the comic book was shared with the Arizona Assembly, state assembly,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually led to a change in how foster children are put through the system, essentially. So there
Wow.
was actual, like, legitimate change based on one of the youth comic books. Now that's kind of an unusual story. The change that usually happens, is in a young person's life after they publish their comic book. They attend a huge celebration with family members and community members, and those kinds of personal impacts. Who knows where those ripples will go? But we have kept in touch with some of our youth participants who are now like in their 20s or maybe even older.
Yeah.
And some of them are poets, artists in technology, social media content and marketing. So I don't know that any have become professional comic book creators, but that's not the point anyway. The point is to launch people in their lives to be confident and excited about and creative about what they can do. So there's been a lot of change both on the personal and kind of the larger level as well.
Wow. Well, first of all, wow, to that story in Tucson, Arizona. That's really amazing. That's incredible. And it also shows how far the art, like a little piece of art can go, right? And then you just took the question off my tongue, because I was going to ask you, because the program has been around for over 20 years, right? So a lot of your earlier students are adults now. So, and you kind of answered that already. So it's really nice to hear that they're starting off with your program, going to build their own careers and being, in one way or the other, creative and, um, successful people. So that's really nice. So, how big is the program? How many cities around the country? How many countries have been involved in this? And how are you choosing the place to go, or how other places find you and bring the program to their communities?
It's been quite a journey over 23 years. So there's no easy answer to the places that we're working in or have worked in. But we've worked with almost 250,000 youth over in every US state. We've had a program in countries including Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kazakhstan, Mexico, where we've had our first Spanish language program that was sponsored by the US State Department. So that was really interesting kind of experience.
I got to. What language did you use in Kazakhstan?
Yeah, it's a very good question. In Kazakhstan, we used English
Okay.
because the youth were learning English in school, and so that was actually also a U.S. State Department program, and it was really fascinating because I obviously had never been there before, never really imagined going there, and so I was really unsure of what to expect. so many great teachers excited about bringing creativity to the classroom because even though there's somewhat of a comics culture, as I learned, I was in the city of Almaty, um, but by and large, it had never been brought into this classroom. So, but very open-minded and really talented teachers who had a great time with the project with the youth that they worked with there. So, it's been a different journey everywhere that I've brought the program. I'll say in the last, well, in 2020, with the hit of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
this program that had been always a classroom-based program, almost always with paper and pencil rather than technology on purpose, became somewhat of a virtual experience over the COVID period. And we had successful programs, particularly here in New York City, fully virtual program. But I will say that I feel like it's not the same. And so as we kind of get back underway with our feet, in the classroom, we'll be launching more in-person programs again, including one that we're planning in New York City, an exciting celebration of the 50th year of hip hop in partnership with the Department of Youth and Community Development here. So we don't quite know the details yet, but I think that it's going to be a really exciting opportunity again to use comics to tell a story, in this case, a history. And I think it's going to be truly exciting.
Oh, wow, it sounds great. So how, let's say I'm in San Diego, what me or anyone else in San Diego need to do to bring your program to San Diego youth?
Well, I think there are two ways that happens usually. One is, a school district or school itself will just contact us and say, we want to work with this program. We're interested in the curriculum and so on. That's been the more recent way where we've worked with sort of individual sites and individual schools. But more typically over the last decades, we've had a grant from a community foundation, or again, as I said before, the State Department or some other organization that says we're targeting San Diego or we're targeting this region. And then, through the monies from that grant, we would invite schools, libraries, after school programs to participate in that larger level kind of program. And we did work with San Diego quite a few years back now. I don't quite remember the details of the program, but I know that we have done work on the West Coast, although being an East Coast program, it's been predominantly on the East Coast, but we have definitely done some work in California and elsewhere.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm like, as we were talking, this is how my brain is working. There's an amazing group in San Diego. It's called Outreach.
Yes.
You know them, right?
Yes.
Are you in contact? Because I'm like thinking as we're talking, I need to contact Anna and make sure that you guys know each other.
Yes, I think that we might have worked with Outreach back when, because they've been around for quite a while, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so I can't remember though exactly, but that would be a wonderful contact. And that's the way these things happen is, oh, let's connect with this person and oh wow, there's a synergy there, and all of a sudden we have a program running, and that's a beautiful thing. So yes, please do.
I will make sure to make an introduction after we're done recording this. Yeah, right away. Awesome. Hey, In the Arts Scene listeners. Do you remember Mark O'Donnell from Pixel 2 Editions? He's been on the show in Season 3, Episode 7, and told us everything we need to know about giclée printing. And take my word for it, Mark and his team are the best in Southern California and beyond. I've been a client of Pixel 2 Editions since 2019, and I've been shouting about them from the rooftops ever since. Luckily, I don't have to do it anymore because I have a podcast. Despite being San Diego local, Mark and his team are working with some of the best photographers and artists from all states, including Clark Little and Kadir Nelson. And frankly, if you are a photographer or a digital artist, you don't need to be local to work with Pixel 2 Editions. Just use a file upload on their website for your heavy images and write down the specs. They can print small proofs for you on any substrate you want and ship them to you for free. And for my listeners, they offer a free 8x10 full image proof on metal. Just tell them that you heard about them on the podcast and they will take care of you. Let me tell you, their metal prints are amazing. Whenever I order mine, they fly off the shelves in no time. So I highly recommend you try it out. And oh, did I mention that they are a full service company? It means that they do everything from color correcting and printing to framing and shipping directly to you or your clients. So don't wait, go to pixel2editions.com, 2 is a number and editions is plural, or call 858-549-7299. Again, pixel2editions.com, 2 is a number and editions is plural, or call 858-549-7299. Say hi for me. Where do you think the program is going to go in the future? I mean, you mentioned the way you started, how it's been developed, how many different areas geographically you have conquered, and then COVID obviously has changed a lot of things, and you moved a little bit online, and it's somewhat a digital experience right now. So we are hopefully at the end of this whole pandemic situation. So where the program is going after this? Will there be any changes, developments, evolution, expansion?
Yes, I'm kind of open-minded and open-hearted about where it goes next. I've always sort of kept an eye out on what the opportunities could be. I will say that it's not my full-time job anymore, although it used to be. I used to live on the grants that we ran through the program and everything, but since 2008, I've been teaching at a college in New Jersey called Ramapo College. So one of the things that's taken the pressure off of having to have this certain grant or certain money flowing to the program at all given times for it to survive. So in a sense, that's helped it survive and kind of continue on even more. So where the future will bring with it, I'm not quite sure. As I said, we are just starting a brand new partnership with DYCD. We've worked with them for many years in the past, but took a break over COVID. So I think that one will be a really exciting project here in New York City. I would like to continue with expanding the program in different languages in different countries. I think that program that we did in Mexico was actually in Tijuana, first fully Spanish language comic book project. It could be a English language builder, but it doesn't have to be. Comics could be in any language.
Yeah.
And so, to be able to tell that story and build your creative skills in any language, I think is very powerful. So, I think we'd like to see continued partnerships across, again, as you said, now that maybe there's an opportunity to start working with partners at a distance to, again, to see that grow in different countries, because the power for connecting people and connecting ideas and building ideas around community and tolerance, these kinds of programs I think are really crucial for that. And of course, our young people are the only ones who are going to advocate for these kinds of things in the future. So we need them. And so we need them to be thinking creatively and embracing each other, no matter what their different backgrounds are.
That's amazing. How many people are in your organization?
You're looking at person one. This is an organization run by myself, along with a
You
lot of,
kidding?
no, absolutely. Well, the structure of this organization is loose in the sense that it's much more of a curriculum and a
Uh-huh.
project than it is a business. And so the effort to disperse the idea, I feel that's the mission of the nonprofit element of this, as well as just my life work, to share the idea with as many people as possible. So I don't personally go into the classrooms and teach the youth. I couldn't possibly, I would only be able to work with one classroom if I did that. So I've been spending all my time working with the teachers and the educators and parents and community members to train them. And so they bring it out to their communities and they implement the project. And that sort of more dispersed, non-central element of the organization, I think has really helped expand the program not just regionally, but also the different ideas that I've learned from different organizations and programs. So, for example, I'll never forget this one program in Brooklyn. They showed me their comic book, and it looked totally unlike any other comic book. They had taken photographs
Uh-huh.
and pasted the actual photographs into the comic book along with the writing. And so it reminded me that you don't have to draw to make a comic. You can do other media and build a comic around that. And so I've been trying to share that idea with all the other programs going forward as well. So it's very much a labor of love, but also one that I think has helped me connect with a lot of different people around the world with like-minded energy.
Wow, that's amazing that you by yourself not only has kept it, you have kept it going for so many years, and obviously you've inspired so many people to bring it out to their own communities. And maybe are you aware of someone else who has taken your curriculum, is teaching someone else in their community to be a teacher of that curriculum? So it should be a ripple effect.
Yes, absolutely. And that's happened again, as an example. We had a great project in Imperial County in California,
Uh-huh.
out in the desert. And they were, this was from a US Department of Education grant to help English language learners. The city is right on the border, to build their English language skills through creating comic books. And we trained all the teachers in the district, including kindergartner teachers, high school physics teachers, to use the idea of creating a comic book to further knowledge and understanding in the classroom. And it had such a great impact that even now, 10 years later, those teachers have been helping new teachers in the district to use the program. And it's continued on in Imperial County. And I think that's the best a testament to sustainability. A lot of times in grants and in general, they want to know how you can sustain the effort. And oftentimes it means give me more money, to be able to continue this. But I have really been trying to sustain the comic book project by giving the knowledge to other people and letting them run with it and do different things with it, and letting me learn from their efforts. And so, that's just one example of how it has lived on without me um, over the years, which is really exciting to me because that's really the point and the purpose of it.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's amazing. And by the way, my husband grew up in the Imperial County, so I I wonder if he will
Maybe
be
he created a
familiar.
comic book.
Yeah, I'll ask him. Well, actually, he did. I know we. Oh my God, we have this huge project of cleaning out our garage, and there are some boxes of memorabilia from his school years, which I believe was actually before you have started the program. But nonetheless, he there are some comic books that he drew. So that's yeah, that's amazing. It's really amazing.
Amazing. And, just by the fact that as a young person, he was drawing these comics and writing these comics, just from an educational perspective, there was a lot of planning going on. There was a lot of writing and drafting and story development and sentence structure. And these are all the things that we're trying to teach our students to learn in school, but we often, teachers often revert to worksheets and workbooks and a very scripted curriculum when all the while the child was designing a comic book on their own. The power is right there. And so I think when we build off the students' interests, we can really help them thrive. And it makes the job of teaching become that much better and that much more fun. So I will say, just as an aside, that the Comic Book Project is not the only program that I launched in this vein. From 2008 to 2000, and I think about 15, I was working on something called the Youth Music Exchange. And
Hmm.
this is where we formed record labels inside schools. And
Mm.
so the kids were writing their songs, but they were also writing a marketing plan and writing a business plan and designing, at that time, a CD cover. And again, publishing the work, having a record release party. These were all ways of promoting writing and, in this case, math, because they had to come up with a budget and come up with a lot of different sort of calculations about how you were going to spend your money on the record label. just as another example of how creativity can be a pathway to learning. And I think there are almost probably an infinite ways that that could happen, but these are just some of the examples that I've worked on.
Well, this is a very interesting spin because I wasn't aware of this program, and I really want to drill down to this topic. But first, I want to ask you the question: you are a music educator, by train, right? Um, how and comic books is really just like you said. There's so much going into it. Not only drawing and writing. There's a storyline. There's storyboard creation, etc. So it's a really, really specific kind of a um, process to develop a comic book. So where did you learn it? Because you had to learn it, right?
In a way, although I've really always approached the comic book project as a very sort of open and organic process, not so much how a professional comic book creator would go about it. This has sort of been adapted for the young learner. So it's very much about character development and storyline development, and not much about art skills per se. It's much more about creative skills, and I think there's a real difference there. And maybe we can share with your listeners some links to some examples of youth comic books so you can
Absolutely.
kind of see just how great they are, because so many of them are beyond creative. So back when I first started in 2000, as I said, I was working at this publishing company and really focusing on literacy workbooks. And I knew there was a better way. And so, just having a very basic framework for creating a comic book has been the way that we've approached it. So, and then we've tried to share the way a professional would do it. Um, but we've never really used professional comic books in the program because we don't really want youth to get overwhelmed by what a
Hmm.
professional does. So we share the youth comics as examples of what they could do. And same with the music based program, sharing examples of other youth songs or CDs or publications as a inspiration for what you could do in your own record label or your own comic book project company or whatever it is you were doing.
All right, now let's talk about that music program. So what's the name of the program, first of all?
Okay, I'm not really working on it anymore, but it was called the Youth Music Exchange. I've been,
Okay.
again, sharing the idea with as many educators as possible. But the Youth Music Exchange, I was working with a partner named Bill McKinney, who's based in Philadelphia. And the whole idea was, again, to use creative skills as a pathway to learning, to school, to inspiration, to community development. So in this case, I used what I learned from the comic book project, which was, focus on creativity, focus on student interests. Um, in this case, use some technology in the Youth Music Exchange because they were using laptops and software. Now anybody could have a recording studio on their laptop.
Yeah.
So why not take advantage of that in some way and really inspire the kids to really want to create their own songs, their own raps, their own beats, but also write about them. And in each case, each of the record labels had a small budget to produce a CD and a record release party. So use your math skills to do some budgeting and thinking about how you'll get the word out and what kind of ways could you use social media to promote your product. So that was the concept behind there. That was funded by a grant from an organization in Indianapolis called the Mind Trust, and that one did definitely have an impact in San Diego. We might have even been through Arts Reach that we worked with a couple of juvenile, uh, they weren't detention centers, but they were students who had gotten in trouble for various different things, and they were sort of re orienting those students back into the mainstream school district after certain things that happened in their lives. So it was sort of like a transition school. And they really took the project and did amazing things with it. Again, telling their stories through their songs and through their raps or whatever it might be. So those are some impacts that we had in that program.
Oh, that's amazing. Does program still exist?
It exists in the number of people who have continued on with it, but as an organization, it doesn't really exist anymore. So one thing that was happening in my life was, I had the comic book project, and then I was like, okay, I have this another idea, this youth music exchange. And then I was saying to myself, well, I'll start this whole sort of universe of creative projects that can lead to academic building and helping kids do better. So I was starting to develop a video game project where the youth would be creating video games. And then, as I said before, I'm one person working on, at that point, all of these three projects. And I just realized I was taking on too much. And I had to step back. And this is something that we often have to do as creative people, whether, you're a creative person yourself or as an educator or whatever it is. And I decided to really focus on my original concept with the comic book project and do that as well as I could without spreading myself too thin and burning myself out. So that was sort of a life experience I had with sort of thinking about all the time I was spending and all the energy I was spending to try to do something that still I think was a good idea, but maybe not the right thing for me at that time in life. So
Well,
those things happen, and I'm still, I'm very happy with that decision I made.
yeah, well, we need a few more of you.
Right. We need some clones who could take on all the
Yeah.
also builds up to that question you were asking before, like who's in this organization? I never really thought of myself as a business person. And I never really wanted to run a business. I want to be an educator and a musician and help young people be creative. That's really where my focus is. So, I felt like I was spending a lot of time kind of trying to build a business and get grants and build an organization and a board of directors and all of this, which takes time away from being creative. Um, that's really kind of where I made that kind of turn in life.
I see. I see. And well, let's talk a little bit about your personal creativity. You mentioned before we started recording, you mentioned that you're a musician, you play in a band, you're sitting in the home-based studio with padded walls, which makes your voice sound so soft. And I'm pretty sure that my editor is going to be happy. So are you this is your main creative outlet outside of the comic book project? Um, let's talk about that.
I've been a musician all of my life, basically since elementary school. And I think it's so important for a young person to find that spark in them. For some, it might be comic books. For some, it might be writing raps. For me, it was playing the bass. And so I started on guitar, acoustic guitar, and I just couldn't figure out the lining up the chords the right way. And then I discovered the bass and it sort of became a part of me, and so I've been playing that instrument ever since then. I really mostly focus on playing the upright bass. I do play some electric bass, but it's something about that big body of that hollow instrument that reverberates through you that
You
I
mean
think is
like a
so
big
powerful.
bass, not the bass guitar?
No, no, the big double bass,
Wow.
which I carry around in a big giant case. I also play in a sort of an electric version of it that's sized down, but it's still an upright bass. And um, I just, it's part of my life. I practice at least an hour every day, just almost as, meditation and therapy. That's kind of where I go for it. But I have been playing in a band for over 30 years. So I
Wow.
started playing this band in college. It's a ska band, kind of like
I
a
love
ska
ska.
rock, ska punk band. It's
I
called
love ska.
Mephistopheles. And we've been doing this for so long now, and it's, truly my best friends in the band. And so back when in the early 90s, we spent many, many nights on the road. We don't nearly do that as much anymore, but we still do get out on tour occasionally. And last year we went to Europe and we're working on a new record. So it's like this creative outlet, is still very important for me. And I still, love it. And so that's why I do it. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't be doing it anymore. I've seen
That's
too many
amazing.
musicians kind of get burnt out and been like, enough of this. So as long as I'm still enjoying it, I'm still going to do it.
And you still have a original band, like all your friends, like no one has left. Wow.
Well, we've had a couple of people come and go over the years, including me. I took a break from the band, I think in the late 90s for a little bit. just sometimes being in a band doesn't really fit in your life. But the band itself sort of reformed in 2014, or yeah, 2012. So it's been over 10 years that we've been back together and making music and enjoying it.
That's awesome. So you guys are writing and performing, create your own original music.
Yes.
And where do you play? I mean, I assume somewhere around New York City.
Well, we're playing in New York City in April to kick off a spring tour. The thing is, a band can't really play in the same city too often. So we only play, even though we're based in New York, we can only play New York like once or twice a year. People just aren't going to come out every week to see the show. They'll come out once a year. So we have to, that's why we have to go on tour occasionally to, hit all the different places we haven't been in a year or two. So this April, we'll be doing a tour from New York to Florida. And in the middle of that, we'll be recording at least part of our new record. So we're excited about that. And just again, a bunch of older guys kind of being creative on the road and enjoying the time with each other. There's no other feeling like performing music in front of people who love your music. I won't say that we have a ton of fans, but we do have a lot of dedicated fans who really love to see us. And that is just a very special feeling. So that's why we do it.
Wow, that's awesome because I have so many comments like right about this little sentence. So, first of all, my husband would love to talk to you. He's also a bass player, but he started with cello and he went a little bit different extreme. I mean, his main instrument is a bass guitar, but he lately started playing on U-bass. If you don't know, it's a ukulele bass.
Wow, I've
Yeah.
never heard of that.
So yeah, that's his latest kind of a toy, I should say.
I love that.
But
I love that.
yeah, and another thing that I wanted to comment on is that I have been trying to get some musicians on the podcast for as long as the podcast has been around for a couple of years at least. And I have some people who are saying yes, but never coming. Actually, we never scheduled anything. So, and then here you are. We started with comic books and education, and now I learned that there is actually an original ska band, and you guys have been around for 30 years and have following. So, yeah, I need to have you back. You and maybe
Okay,
a
we can
couple
talk
of
about that
yeah,
another time.
yeah, absolutely. But even with this episode, so the episode is going to come out second half of April, so you probably will be on tour. But I don't think it's going to be too late to share with my listeners the links, or if you have a tour schedule, whoever will be interested to visit and go and listen. So yeah,
That would be great. And we have
yeah,
to get to the West Coast. It's been many years
yes,
to
please.
for us to have to go that way. It's
I
just so far and so expensive, but one day we'll get back out there.
I don't think we have any ska music here around. At least I haven't heard about anything. So we have lots of yacht rock, which I don't mind yacht rock, but it's
In small doses,
it's
I guess I could take it.
yeah, it's a little bit, a little bit too fluffy for me. So yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be awesome. There's a great venue in San Diego County. We can talk about it off the record, offline. So yeah, well, it's been amazing, and it's been almost an hour. We've been talking about different things. I'm so grateful for you to coming on the podcast. Again, so grateful to Azert Land for bringing up your name and making a connection, helping me book you on the podcast. So, and that's out to all of you guys who are listening. If you have a story, just don't shy away. I have a place on the website, intheartscene.com, where you can like actually right on at the bottom of the homepage, there's a form. If you have a story, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk. And you know how many people I'm having on the podcast talking to for the first time, and every single time I had never had anyone who would not be interesting enough to be published and go on air. And today's conversation is one of those gems. I saw, like, I'm geeking on discovering those little stories. It's amazing. Well, Michael, thank you so much again. I am
Thank
so
you,
happy.
Galina.
I'm so happy we have met, and I will definitely reach out to you again to bring you and your bandmates to talk about music. And
That'd
that
be
will be,
cool.
it will be cool, and it will be kind of challenging for me because I know nothing about music. So you guys will have to educate me right here on the podcast.
That would be fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, thank you so much, and we'll see you again in the art scene.
Thank you, everybody.
It has been another episode of In the Art Scene podcast. If you liked today's conversation, please give us a good review on Apple and go listen to other great stories. Check out our website intheartscene.com or follow us on Instagram at intheartscene for more content. If you are a creative and you want to share your story, shoot us a message from the website or DM us on Instagram. Look forward to seeing you next time in the art scene.